moving on to case study number 4. And this is one that might strike a chord with many of you. And this is my dog, who was completely dysregulated if she saw another dog out on a walk. It didn't matter how close or how far, she lost her mind. All of the hackles on the back of her neck would come up. She would scream, not just bark, scream. She would try to get in behind me. If the dog came anywhere near us, she would lunge and snap. It was anarchy. And so how often did I allow that to rehearse? Like maybe once. And then I went and journaled. This is the dysregulation I'm seeing. What can I do? Now, back then, we didn't realize the impact of her nutrition. She had great nutrition. She just didn't have great nutrition for her. So that would have solved a lot of problems and would have taken me a lot faster to help her become more regulated around dogs. But here's what the co-regulation looked like. Number one, I never took her for a walk where there'd be any dogs. Around our property, yes. Did I take her where there were other dogs? Absolutely. But I never took her on a path or a street where she would have to see other dogs. What I would do, I would take her to a place where I knew there were dogs, but I also knew I could get like hundreds of meters away from them. So I would go to a park on Lake Ontario and I would sit on a bench with a little dog bed and I'd bring a book and I would give her a big meaty bone. So the dogs were a long way away, and she was just learning, and she was just chewing on her bone. Am I helping her to self-regulate? Trick question. No, I'm not. I'm co-regulating by the distance away from the other dogs and by giving her something that's really amazing for her. Would there be a little bit of classical conditioning? I'm chewing on this and dogs are walking by. I don't think so, because the dogs are really too far away. So we would do that, and eventually I could be closer to the path. So I might be maybe 5 strides from the path. And instead of giving her a big meaty bone, I would give her just drop cookies in her bed. I would teach her things like chin target behavior, where she would rest her chin on my hand. I would just reinforce we're now being operant. We are now allowing her to choose a behavior, and it didn't have to do anything to do with the dogs. I was getting her nearer the dogs without her having to be forced to engage with the dogs or look at the dogs. When I could see she was more relaxed, then we went to a co-regulation that was leading me to a place where I could get out of the picture for her. And that was, we would do some tug games, and then I would stop. I would use my chin target to help her orient to the dog down the path. And then I would move my chin target away. And when she looked back at me, I would either tug or I would give cookies. Now, if the dog was close, obviously I wasn't going to do this when the dog was super close, but I would never use tug when the dog was, within 30, 40 feet of us, because I didn't want the chance of that other dog getting excited and coming and barking and lunging at her. So I would use cookies. The closer the dog got, the more I would co-regulate by moving her further back off the path. Eventually, she could just sit beside me in reinforcement zone. Her confidence had got to a place where she could look at the dog and look at me, exactly as I wrote about in 2004 in my book, Shaping Success, where I talked about my dog Buzzy, who was reactive to my then puppy Decaf. Look at what you're upset by. Look back at me for reinforcement. I mean, there were many, many steps in between that. But that's what I've been teaching since the late 90s. That whatever you're distracted by, you can look at it and then look back at me. Good choices get good rewards, all right? And we're giving high value reinforcement. Eventually, I could not use the chin target. I could let this look at the dog and look at me. But I would never let a dog surprise her. So if I saw a dog in a distance, maybe she was facing this way and a dog was coming, I would always orient her towards the dog. We got to a place where she was self-regulating, in that she would look at the dog, look back at me. And then I could get to a place where I didn't reward every dog. It might just be every other dog, or I would reward 3 dogs, but not the 4th. So we had gotten securely to a place of self-regulation. So I could take this to different parks. I'd always start a little bit further away, but eventually she could be anywhere near dogs. Dogs actually would come up and sniff her. That's when I knew we were moving to a place of habituation. She's had dogs snarl at her, growl at her, lunge at her, and she has not reacted back. She has looked at me, heavily reinforced, and I've gotten her out of there. But that's what you can do when you make sure that your expectations are never higher than the training that you've put in with your dog. That you are, number two, always aware that your dog's behavior is communicating something to you. And you're going to take that communication on board and then work to move from a place of dysregulation to co-regulation as you're on the way to helping that dog ideally be self-regulated. And you may or may not ever get to a place of white noise, and that's okay. Keep advocating for your dog. Don't believe the narratives of people saying he's being XYZ. Don't believe the narratives of the people who are saying he's just this. I had a dog just like that. Smile, thank them for their input, and come on back and review this video one more time.